I'm Liz Faublas, and this is Currents. People of faith have their say in two key primary battles. But what is the future of the Catholic vote in the public square?
Catholics have to learn how to do politics. They have to learn to organize politically in order to achieve legitimate objectives in a legitimate way.
And plenty of prayers after a deadly incident at an Ohio school.
From one end of Ohio to the other, today, tomorrow, and the days to come, we all live in Chardon in a sort of way.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. Well, it was not quite the upset Rick Santorum supporters were hoping for, but their candidate did have a strong showing in the Michigan primaries. Santorum came within about 3 percentage points of Mitt Romney. Many viewed Michigan as a must-win for Romney, who grew up in the state when his father was governor there. Now, Santorum, meanwhile, was still pleased with his showing.
We had a much better night in Michigan than maybe was first reported. We had this was a really great race to go into, in a sense, the belly of the beast, the hometown of my chief rival here in the Republican primary. But even though he's my chief rival in the Republican primary, we are all united in one thing: we are going to defeat Barack Obama in the fall election.
And in yesterday's primaries, the Catholic vote played a part in the final results. According to CBS exit polls, more Catholics came out in support of Romney in both states rather than banking Santorum, who is Catholic. But as we hear from CNN's Renee Marsh, there is still a long way to go before the November general election.
This is a big night. Thanks, you guys.
Mitt Romney advances his lead in the race for the Republican presidential nomination. The former Massachusetts governor won Tuesday's winner-take-all primary in Arizona and survived a tough challenge in Michigan, the state where he was born. The victories, while not the landslides he would have liked, are crucial to his nomination hopes.
So we didn't win by a lot, but we won by enough, and that's all that counts.
Despite some tough campaigning, Rick Santorum settled for second place in both contests, but he will walk away with his portion of the delegates from Michigan.
It's getting harder for people to make ends meet because we have a government that is crushing us every single day with more taxes, more regulations, and the idea that they know better than you.
Ron Paul's poor performances Tuesday did not damper his optimism.
Now, winning the primary, of course, is very, very important, but winning the general election also is very, very important.
Newt Gingrich was not a major factor in either state, nor did he plan to be. He instead set his sights on the South. He was in his home state of Georgia Tuesday, reminding voters of his strategy.
We decided not to compete in Michigan because we thought it would be important to focus here and to focus in Tennessee and in Oklahoma, in Idaho and Ohio.
Well, now all of the candidates have their sights set on those 10 Super Tuesday states. The contest will be happening on March 6th, and we're talking about a lot of delegates up for grabs, more than 400. And included in the Super Tuesday states is Ohio, and that is a very big battleground state.
And stay tuned, there's more Currents ahead. Coming up, Catholics are definitely voting, but what are they saying?
Catholics don't know how to do politics anymore. On the administration and Democratic side, you had Catholics versus Catholics. This is a motif of our current state of affairs in the church.
Welcome back. Well, whether it's the contraception mandate, the 2012 presidential election, or any number of other issues, people want to know where Catholics stand. The bishops have been vocal in their opposition to the mandate announced last month by the Obama administration, requiring most religious organizations to cover contraception, sterilization, and some abortion-inducing drugs in their employee health plans. And last night, it was Catholics who decided the outcome of the Michigan and Arizona primaries. In both states, they swung in Mitt Romney's favor. But what role will Catholics play in the public square and the political process going forward? Last night at Fordham University, Catholic journalist and author David Gibson examined just that.
In the 1960 campaign, Father John Courtney Murray consulted on John F. Kennedy's famous speech in Houston, defending his faith and candidacy to the Protestant ministers gathered there. A speech that Rick Santorum now says, in his kind of bulimic Catholicism, makes him want to vomit.
David Gibson is a very well-respected author, screenwriter, and journalist. And we brought him here to Fordham to talk about the role of Catholicism in the public square, because that role is so controverted and controversial today, perhaps more than ever.
Catholics don't know how to do politics anymore. The contraception mandate is again Exhibit A. On the administration and Democratic side, you had Catholics versus Catholics. This is a motif of our current state of affairs in the church.
And that sort of unified Catholic community and bloc that John F. Kennedy could count on in 1960 doesn't exist anymore. You have the Catholic community that is so divided among social conservatives, economic conservatives, social liberals, economic liberals, social justice Catholics, pro-life Catholics. So each candidate knows that winning is about creating coalitions. So they try and peel off different segments of the Catholic vote. That's a good thing for politics, but it's probably not such a good thing for the Catholic Church.
I think they're bringing the worst attributes of religious thinking and history to the political sphere, or the ones that are least adaptable and appropriate to politics. Ideas like martyrdom and schism, the Tea Party, condemnation and alienation, and, above all, a purist's mentality that considers political positions as articles of faith and compromise as a form of heresy.
The Catholic vote is so key to whoever is going to win the presidency. Really, not only do Catholics swing from one party to the other in presidential elections, but whatever candidate gets most of the Catholic votes always wins. And that's a very telling statistic.
What I think Catholics could do and should do, really, is instead of finding some other political ideology or home, is to revive the traditional modes of Catholic thinking about our relationship to the world and our relationship to each other, a kind of politics of personalism, if you will, of the sort that the late John Paul II could be said to have practiced.
There's no good candidate for a Catholic to vote for. And that's why, as the bishops say, you have to use your conscience and consult Catholic teaching and weigh all of the various positions of the particular candidates and the issues involved. It's the kind of deliberative way of approaching politics that we, as Americans, as a country as a whole, need more than ever.
And in that report, David Gibson actually referenced a Rick Santorum quote that recently made news. Santorum said in a talk last year that the famous 1960 speech by then presidential candidate John F. Kennedy to Baptists in Houston made him want to, quote, throw up. In a radio interview yesterday, Santorum said he wished he had that particular line back. He did, however, defend his criticism of the speech. Stay tuned. There is more currents ahead. The New York Catholic Conference is urging action on legislation in Washington. We'll have that story and the rest of the day's headlines next. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Liz Faublas. Coming up in just a bit, an Ohio community comes out to show support following a deadly incident at a school there. But first, let's have a look at the day's headlines. Well, the New York State Catholic Conference is getting the word out about a measure to protect Americans' right to conscience. The conference, which is the public policy arm of New York's bishops, is encouraging New Yorkers to contact their senators and urge them to support the Respect for Rights of Conscience Act. Now, the conference saying that the measure ensures that people in the healthcare industry will not be forced to violate their religious beliefs when making healthcare decisions. Missouri Senator Roy Blunt introduced the bill following the Obama administration's announcement about the contraception mandate. That's the rule requiring most private health insurance plans, including those of religious organizations, include coverage for contraception, sterilization, and some abortion-inducing drugs. Now, the Senate is expected to vote on Blunt's measure on Thursday. From Washington, some strong words from a high-ranking bishop to Congress. Bishop William Lori, who chairs the U.S. Bishops' Ad Hoc Committee on Religious Liberty, says the contraception mandate has, quote, absurd consequences. Testifying, that is, before the House Judiciary Committee, Lori says the accommodation issued by President Obama earlier this month merely introduced additional regulations. Lori also saying the accommodation does not change the scope of the mandate and its exemption. He says it is legally unenforceable promise and would not exempt anyone from the mandate. Meanwhile, Franklin Graham, the son of the Reverend Billy Graham, is apologizing for questioning President Obama's faith. Graham says he regrets saying anything that may have cast doubts on Obama's personal religious beliefs. In a television interview last week, he told reporters that they would have to question the president about his faith, adding that under Islamic law, Islam sees Obama as a son of its faith. Graham says he apologizes to the president and anyone who was offended for his, quote, not better articulating his reason for not supporting Obama. According to Religion News Service, Graham says he disagrees with the president on same-sex marriage and abortion. Well, a Maryland woman who is in a same-sex relationship says a priest denied her communion at her mother's funeral. The Washington Post reports that when the woman stepped up to receive communion, the priest told her he could not give it to her because she lived with a woman. The same priest also reportedly left the altar when the woman gave the eulogy for her mother. The funeral took place this past weekend in Gaithersburg, Maryland, part of the Archdiocese of Washington. Now, according to the Post, the woman and her family are demanding the priest be removed from parish ministry. In a letter to the priest, the woman told him that he will, quote, pay dearly on the day of judgment. The paper reports that the Washington Archdiocese issued a statement saying the priest's actions were against policy and that the situation would be looked into. Meanwhile, from India, a parish priest and more than 1,500 parishioners are reportedly being charged with attempted murder. UCA News reports parishioners in Goa attacked policemen when the officers showed up on Saturday night to speak with the priest. Now, according to the report, the priest was unsuccessful in his attempt to protect the policemen. The priest says the officers spoke with him to find out if parishioners were planning to boycott upcoming elections. The superintendent of police says the attack was unprovoked. Now an elected official says there was no reason for police to even go to the parish at night. Well, in a high-profile case from Scotland, 2 midwives have lost a legal battle to avoid assisting with abortions. The Scottish Catholic Observer reporting that a judge rejected the case brought by the midwives, who are both Catholic. The women said being forced to oversee staff that performs abortions violated their human rights. The judge said the women were protected from having any direct involvement in abortions. From London, a group of occupiers has been evicted from the place where they've camped out for more than 4 months. London police removed the protesters from the tent city outside the Anglican St. Paul's Cathedral. Most left peacefully, but police did arrest 20 people. The protesters were part of Occupy London's stock exchange movement. Well, could it be a sign of improving relations between the Vatican and a socialist government? Rome Reports has that story.
A Vatican delegation recently visited Vietnam for a quick 2-day visit. Both states agreed that the Holy See can continue to send its non-resident special envoy, who occasionally visits Vietnam, to strengthen their relationship. The Holy See said it wants to broaden the role and mission of its special envoy, Archbishop Leopoldo Girelli, who could eventually serve as the Holy See's ambassador in Saigon. For now, Vietnam says it will continue its collaboration with the special envoy. It even encouraged the church to, quote, participate in the current course of its national, economic, and social development. These type of meetings have taken place 3 times already between both states. However, Vietnam and the Holy See don't have official diplomatic relations. Some describe this as odd, since Vietnam has over 6 million Catholics. In fact, it's the second Asian country with the most Catholics. Even though the government says it respects freedom of religion, the activity of the church remains under tight control.
And Pope Benedict will be on the go at the end of March, visiting 2 Latin American countries. A spokesman for the Mexican Bishops' Conference tells Catholic news agency that Benedict will be a messenger of peace and hope to Mexico. Benedict arrives there on March 23rd for a 2-day visit. He leaves the country for Cuba on the 26th. NET will bring you extensive coverage of the Pope's entire trip. Well, stay tuned. There is more currents ahead. When we return, an Ohio community prays after a deadly school attack.
Russell was one of my best friends since I was like 3 or 4. You know, we all grew up together.
And finally tonight, a truly horrific situation at a school in Ohio earlier this week. On Monday, a student at Chardon High School in the town of Chardon went on a deadly shooting spree, resulting in the deaths of 3 other students. Well, according to a prosecutor, the suspect told authorities he shot people at random. It's an act that the community is still trying to make sense of, but Ohio Governor John Kasich says they will recover.
This town will rise. They're a wonderful group of people here. They're closely connected. They're faithful people. They're hardworking people. They're the best of what we have in Ohio. And from one end of Ohio to the other, today, tomorrow, and the days to come, we all live in Chardon in a sort of way. We're going to pray for them. The state of Ohio will bring any resources they would need. But these are great people, and out of a very, very, very terrible tragedy, they'll rise again, and they'll make this an even greater town before the events of the last few days. God bless them. God bless Ohio.
Kasich also spoke last night at a vigil at a Catholic church in Chardon. Emily Valdez has that report.
Your superintendent is a great leader and a great man. You know that, don't you?
He did a wonderful job taking care of my son and making sure he was safe.
Thousands of people applauded Chardon school officials and law enforcement at the community vigil at the Church of St. Mary in Chardon. Outside in the cold, a sea of candlelight and heavy hearts. Many mourners wearing Chardon High School's signature red and black. Prayers and thoughts were especially with the families of Daniel Parmenter, Demetrius Hewlin, and Russell King.
Russell was one of my best friends since I was like 3 or 4. You know, we all grew up together.
Many here are realizing this is the start of a long emotional process.
We haven't lived long enough to even experience the kind of time this is going to take, so.
Ohio Governor John Kasich urged people to show support for the victims' families long term without being overbearing.
It's about reaching out to people who you never thought about reaching out to before.
For some here, the harsh reality of the tragedy is just hitting.
I don't know if I'm going to get used to it because where it happened, I usually sit there, you know, close to where I sit in lunch.
I think it's setting in a little bit more than what happened. And yesterday, you know, it's just, he couldn't believe it.
The vigil was a show of solidarity, a show of support, grief, and how much the victims are loved.
If anything ever happens to me, I hope half as many people are here.
That report from Emily Valdez, and we will keep the families of Chardon High School in our prayers. Well, that is all for this edition of Currents. Be sure to visit us online at currentsny.net. You can also connect with us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Liz Faublas. Thank you for watching and have a good night.